The name of this piece is called Better to Reign in Hell Than Serve in Heaven. And this line is taken from John Milton's Paradise Lost. And for those who are maybe not familiar with Paradise Lost, it's actually an epic poem that was written in blank verse by a 17th century poet called John Milton. I would research it a bit. It's quite an interesting poem. The poem concerns the biblical story of Adam and Eve and the fallout of man and the temptation that takes place between the fallen angel Satan, and then ultimately leading to the expulsion for Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. So it's quite interesting. It's quite popular as well in English literature. So there are little pieces, bits and pieces that I've taken out from the poem, and it is also mixed with various other source material. To start off, there are three characters in the work, and on the left hand side we see a character that is he's got a hat on and he's got the words Eris written on the hat. This character really represents authority. Um, Linking it back to Paradise Lost, this would be sort of God. In the center over here, we have a character which is holding up a skull in his hand, and this character actually represents Adam and Eve. When I say it represents Adam and Eve, the story behind this would be this character is quite influenced by this character over here who is represents Satan or represents perhaps bad influence. And the skull over here represents the apple, which is actually sort of, the temptation, desire, sort of promises, reward. But I wanted to show this really as in the context of youth growing up in Cape Town on the Cape Flats, where they are easily influenced by bad friends or people within their community that influence them, and they all sort of fall to the same traps in communities that experience a lot of gangsterism and poverty. So the first thing that we see in the background over here, this is all text actually that is taken from the poem itself, um, Paradise Lost. And initially, this text was just painted behind on black, and then I started painting over it, and I started putting the characters down on here. Um, it sort of comes out on the side over here as well. Oops. And it sort of peeks through. But what I would do is I would actually encourage people to have a look at the book. You can probably get a copy at the library or probably online. And I would encourage you to look for these lines as well because they are quite specific. I'm not going to give all the information what it is actually about, but more so for people to ask questions and to seek out the information and knowledge here. Then down here we have text saying feed to a nation and induce mass amnesia, rainbow tablets 99 cents. And what this is really about is it refers to the concept of the rainbow nation in South Africa and how many years later, even after democracy, this concept has just become a failed concept. This idea that everybody is living equally, hand in hand, the idea that Nelson Mandela had for the new South Africa, how it just did not work. As a concept in a rainbow nation, there's still a lot of inequality, there's still much contrast between the rich and poor, and so I came up with this fictional product which is rainbow tablets. It's like, so if someone has taken rainbow tablets, it's really just induces amnesia, for one to just forget what the actual history is of the country, what actually happened and how it is that we are in the current situation that we are right now in the country as well. Um, Moving on from there, if I move down to this character over here, there's some text, and this comes actually from a child's poem, and it says in Afrikaans, "Huna vati kekelni," which is actually the starting line of a recitation, and what it means in if I translate the first line over here, it is a chicken that does not cluck, basically, and that's the starting line to this children's recitation. You'd play it as a child. It was quite common in Cape Town, and it's something that just sort of sprung out to me, and so I put it down. Moving down over here, the next point is, or the next text is, retaliate with hate, then we multiply. And this text comes from a track by the the late Tupac Shakur, from a song called "Nothing to Lose," and this line talks about the vicious cycle of jail and the consequences of living in impoverished areas, where there is gangsterism and where there's no other option but to join gangs or to do crime, and that vicious circle of just going into jail, coming out of jail, going into jail, coming out of jail. So this piece really deals a lot with temptation as such, and it is not specific to to only male. It's for both male and female. Um, so that's what that line stands out for. Moving down here, more of John Milton's Paradise Lost, and then it also flows into a poem by one of my favorite poets, who is a poet called Miguel Pinero, who is from Puerto Rican descent. And this is also quite interesting. I'm not going to reveal too much information about this over here. This will be revealed in another painting because it links to another painting. Up under this character over here is the words, Heaven's Loction. And so Heaven's Loction is to sort of like, Loction is a word that's quite unique to South Africa. The term is used to describe probably a township or a ghetto, underdeveloped areas. So they call it Loction, and I put this word in here, Heaven's Loction, because it's kind of like this question of like, would heaven have a Loction? Would heaven have a township? Would heaven have a ghetto as such? And it ties in also to, once again, one of my favorite artists, musical artist, Tupac Shakur, where he's actually got a song which is called "I Wonder If Heaven's Got a Ghetto." So it's quite an interesting concept to think about that, especially for people who are coming from, impoverished communities, and they've never ever experienced any any good in their lifetimes, and most likely they will live in those neighborhoods or in those impoverished areas for all their life, and they won't experience things. And so this question, which ties in once again with Gold, Guns and Paradise being the name of this body of work, is like, they wonder, even in paradise, if they will be able to access the good in paradise, or if a place such as a ghetto will be reserved for them. And that is pretty much all to this piece. There is some other words that run behind the characters here. I won't go into detail on that either, once again, because it is part of a future painting and more will be revealed in that sense.